Your Royal Highness, the Deputy Prime Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the Ghanaian delegation, I'm grateful to the Education Above All Foundation, organizers of this year's World Innovation Summit for Education, for the opportunity and invitation to address this gathering. EAA must be applauded for the work it has been doing since 2012 in trying to create a bright future for the world's youth, especially those whose lives have been disrupted by war and conflict. It is a most noble undertaking and thus an honor for me to be amongst you as we share ideas and create a platform for deliberations on the theme, Asset over Burden, Education for Refugee Youth. Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, upon my assumption of the high office of President of the Republic of Ghana in January this year, the very first appointment thrust on my modest shoulders was from the new Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. He appointed me co-chair of the 2030 UN Sustainable Development Goals Advocates Group of Eminent Personalities. My duty, and that of all the members of the Advocates Group, which includes the highly respected Qatari, Her Highness Sheikha Moza bin Nasser, is to mobilize political support for the implementation of the 17 SDGs, which include ending poverty and hunger, improving health and education, making cities more sustainable, combating climate change, and protecting oceans and forests. All of these goals are aimed at promoting global development that leaves no one behind. A critical look at the SDGs, however, reveals that education is the key enabler and has the greatest multiplier in achieving the SDGs. SDG number 4 requires that we, quote, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all, unquote. This particular goal impacts on addressing poverty, SDG Goal 1, enhancing health and nutrition, SDG Goal 3, promoting economic growth and labor market opportunities, SDG Goals 8 and 9, and reducing inequalities, SDG Goal 10, amongst others. It remains an undeniable fact that no country has been able to shed the evils of poverty, ignorance, and disease with a largely illiterate population. In a fundamental sense, education is the key to human development and to widening life's options for individuals and society as a whole. Education creates social mobility. It is the hope of every father and mother that education will help their children escape poverty and give them access to a good life. This, unfortunately, is not the case for the 66 million people forcibly displaced all over the world, out of which some 23 million are described as refugees. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, in a report, notes, quote, that refugees are 5 times more likely to be out of school than the global average. Only 50% of refugee children have access to primary education, compared with the global average of more than 90%, unquote. The gap, according to the same report, widens as these children become older. Quote, with only 22% of refugee adolescents attending secondary school, compared to a global average of 84%. At the higher education level, fewer than 1% of refugees attend university, compared to 34% at global level, unquote. This is not right. The specter of tens and tens of millions of young refugees growing up without the needed skills to create a meaningful life for themselves is a dangerous one. What do we expect them to do? What opportunities are available to them? How competitive can they be in this global economy? These are questions that must elicit a concerted and calculated response from the global community. In my view, education, and more education is the only way by which we can foster a sense of cohesion and solidarity amongst displaced persons, especially those of school-going age, and help create for them an enabling environment which will spur them on to lead more purposeful and dignified lives. If the noble goal of the SDGs is to ensure that no one is left behind, and among others, to guarantee education for all, then we must seek to empower those left behind as a result of war and conflict. We should commit ourselves to building a world where every child has the opportunity to better him or herself, and by so doing, better the global community. Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, for those of us who come from a continent with the world's second fastest economic growth rates, the world's fastest growing region for foreign direct investment, and in possession of nearly 30% of the Earth's remaining mineral resources, it is disheartening, to say the least, to find that African youths do not see a future in their respective countries and are willing to cross the Sahara Desert on foot and drown in the Mediterranean Sea in a desperate bid to reach the mirage of a better life in Europe. With the majority of African economies dependent on the production and export of raw materials, who can blame them for wanting to leave? These economies cannot produce wealth and prosperity for the masses on the continent. It therefore drives the determination to seek a much better standard of living out of Africa, thereby fueling the refugee crises and the numerous counts of illegal migrations. We cannot continue traveling this worn path of limited success of being exporters of raw materials. Our problems require that we think outside of the box. Our thinking and approaching to solving problems must be different from the thinking and approach that brought about the problems in the first place. The only way to ensuring prosperity in Africa is through value addition activities in a transformed and diversified modern economy. In other words, the industrial development of our continent. This, however, can only be achieved with an educated workforce. The countries that have done well, even without natural resources, are the countries that have invested in education and skills training. What the evidence from history and the experience of many countries have shown is that it is not natural resources that build nations. It is people who build nations. It is not gold, cocoa, diamonds, timber, or oil that is going to build Africa. If it was, it would have done so already. It is Africans, especially the youth of today, who are going to build Africa. That is why my country continues to do its best in ensuring that we place a high premium on education. We have significantly improved, well above the average in sub-Saharan Africa, in terms of access to early childhood care and education, free and compulsory primary education for all, improved literacy rates, amongst others. 2 months ago, in September, we started the free senior high school program, which aims to guarantee secondary education for all of Ghana's children. The program will ensure that all our children will be educated to at least secondary level, and money, or the lack of it, will no longer mean a denial of education. This has already led to an increase of over 90,000 children who have entered secondary school this academic year who would have otherwise have dropped out at this stage. SDG 4. SDG 4, which aims at ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all, will be within our reach by the target date. All of this is being done because we want to throw open the doors of opportunity and hope to our young people and help build a new African civilization governed by the rule of law, respect for individual liberties and human rights, and the principles of democratic accountability, which will provide the basis for the new Africa of prosperity and dignity, no longer dependent on aid or charity. Education is the soil for growing dreams, and we are now at the point where we need rapidly to transform our country into a progressive and prosperous 21st century nation that remains distinctly and uniquely Ghanaian. We believe that today's youth running barefoot to school could be a future leader of business, industry, or government. Education is the equalizer of opportunity, and so it is vital for us at this turning point in our history and society. I thank you sincerely for your attention.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. President.